Gold won't save you in the next crisis. This will. The Amish Hedge. October 2008. You're refreshing your bank account for the 15th time today. The number keeps getting smaller. Each refresh feels like a punch to the gut. The woman at the next cubicle just got escorted out by security. Something about her husband's margin call. Your 401k statement sits unopened on your desk. You already know what it says. Everything you worked for, everything you saved, just evaporated into thin air. And the worst part, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Meanwhile, 300 miles away in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, an Amish farmer named Jacob is walking his property line. Same day, same crisis. Wall Street is burning. The Dow Jones just crashed 777 points, the largest single-day point drop in history. But Jacob? And he's checking his grain stores, counting his livestock, examining the quality of his soil. His wealth didn't just survive the crisis, it actually increased by 14%. Here's the number that should keep you up at night. The average American household lost $100,000 in net worth during the 2008 collapse. Traditional Amish communities saw their asset values rise. They don't even have bank accounts. The gold bugs had their moment, didn't they? Buy gold. Ultimate hedge against collapse. Sure, gold climbed from $800 to $1,900 per ounce. Sounds great on paper. But fast forward to 2020, trucks stopped running, supply chains shattered, store shelves went bare. Try eating your gold. Try planting it. Try trading it to your panicking neighbor for eggs. Spoiler alert, your neighbor didn't want shiny metal. They wanted food, skills, community, things that actually matter when the system breaks. The Amish already had all of that. Today, we're going to dissect the greatest financial hedge that Wall Street desperately doesn't want you to understand. Here are the 3 reasons why gold won't save you in the next crisis, but the Amish model just might. To understand why the Amish financial model works when everything else fails, we have to go back to March 1933. The United States was in freefall. Over 5,000 banks had collapsed in just 3 years. People who thought their money was safe woke up to find the doors locked and their savings gone. President Roosevelt had just declared a national banking holiday, a polite term for, "We're shutting down the entire financial system because it's broken." Picture yourself as a farmer in rural Pennsylvania during this chaos. Your neighbors who trusted the modern banking system, wiped out. The guy who bragged about his stock portfolio at the general store, broke. The family that took out loans to expand their business, foreclosed. But your Amish neighbor down the road, he's fine. More than fine, actually. He never had money in banks to lose. And here's what historians don't emphasize enough. The Amish weren't just lucky during the Great Depression. They had deliberately designed their entire economic system to be crisis-proof. No debt, no exposure to markets, no dependence on institutions that could fail. Their wealth was in land, skills, livestock, and community bonds. Things that couldn't be deleted from a ledger when a bank went under. In 1933, the average American saw their wealth destroyed by forces completely beyond their control. Meanwhile, Amish communities continued operating exactly as they had for generations. They grew food, they built barns, they helped each other. The economic apocalypse happening in the cities might as well have been on another planet. It seemed like a quaint, outdated way of living, primitive even. Some financial experts of the day would have called it backwards. But here's what they didn't see coming. This primitive system would outperform modern finance during every major crisis for the next 90 years. Let me explain how this system actually functions, because it's more sophisticated than you think. The Amish operate what they call mutual aid, but that term doesn't do it justice. This is a parallel financial infrastructure that makes modern banking look fragile by comparison. Here's how it works. When an Amish family needs a barn, the community builds it. No loan, no interest, no debt. When someone gets sick, the medical bills get divided among the congregation. When a young couple wants to start farming, the community provides land, equipment, and knowledge. $0 change hands in many of these transactions. Think about it like this. A bank is a middleman that takes your money, lends it to someone else, charges interest, and hopes everyone doesn't ask for their money back at the same time. And the Amish cut out the middleman entirely. They are the bank. They are the insurance company. They are the investment fund. Except none of it depends on currency that can be devalued or institutions that can collapse. Think about the trust required for that. Your entire financial security rests on your community's word. No contracts, no FDIC insurance, no government bailouts, just reputation and reciprocity built over generations. Here's your mathematical gut punch. The average American pays roughly $8,000 per year in interest, mortgages, car loans, credit cards, student debt. Over a 40-year working life, that's $320,000 paid to banks for the privilege of borrowing money. The Amish pay zero. That's not a rounding error. That's a completely different economic reality. Their wealth isn't measured in dollars, and it's measured in tangible assets. 80 acres of debt-free farmland, 40 head of cattle, 2,000 bushels of stored grain, relationships with 200 families who owe you reciprocal aid, and skills that remain valuable regardless of what currency does. This system worked beautifully for generations, until modern finance started looking unstable enough that people began paying attention. Number 1. The 1970s inflation crisis that exposed gold's dirty secret. The year is 1971. President Nixon just severed the dollar's link to gold. What followed was economic chaos. Inflation hit 13.5% by 1980. Your savings account was being destroyed by invisible inflation tax. $1 in 1971 could buy what 31 cents bought in 1980. People panicked. Enter the gold bugs. Stage left. Buy gold, they screamed. It's the ultimate inflation hedge. It's real money. And they weren't wrong about the price action. Gold went from $35 per ounce in 1971 to $850 by 1980. A 24 times return. Incredible. But here's the data nobody talks about. During that same period, farmland values in Amish country went from $500 per acre to $2,200 per acre. A 4.4 times return. Not as sexy as gold, sure. But here's the difference. You can't grow food on gold bars. Yet the Amish watched this inflation crisis with what I can only imagine was bemusement. While Americans frantically converted paper dollars into shiny metal, Amish families just kept doing what they'd always done. They grew food, they stored grain, they maintained their equipment, they strengthened community bonds. It was obvious which system was more resilient. The mainstream financial media ignored it. By 1980, gold hit its peak and then crashed 65% over the next 2 decades. The inflation crisis passed. Gold bugs who bought at the top got destroyed. But farmland? It kept appreciating. Food kept having value. Skills kept being useful. Here's what they should have known. Gold only has value because people agree it has value. It's not that different from fiat currency in that respect. But food, shelter, community support during hard times, those have intrinsic value whether the market agrees or not. But wait, it gets worse. Number 2, when the digital economy turned gold into just another tradable asset. Surely the gold bugs learned their lesson from the 1980s crash, right? Oh, my sweet summer child. By the 2000s, something insidious happened. Gold became financialized. ETFs, futures contracts, paper gold, digital gold. Suddenly you could own gold without ever touching it. The same Wall Street machine that created the housing bubble was now packaging gold into derivatives. The supposed hedge against the financial system was now part of the financial system. March 2000, the dot-com bubble pops. $5 trillion in market value evaporates. Tech stocks that people thought were the future? Worthless. Surely gold protected people, right? Gold went from $280 to $320, a 14% gain, while the Nasdaq crashed 78%. Not exactly the crisis protection advertised. Sure, but here's the second-order consequence that made everything exponentially worse. People started treating gold like a tech stock. They traded it. They leveraged it. They bought it on margin. The crisis hedge became a speculation vehicle. Meanwhile, let me tell you what happened in Amish communities during the dot-com crash. Absolutely nothing. Their wealth wasn't tied to Nasdaq valuations or venture capital fantasies. An Amish carpenter in 2000 had the same skills, the same land, the same community support in 2001. Zero change, zero panic. This is exactly what happened in the 1929 crash. Urban Americans jumped out of windows while rural communities barely noticed. History doesn't repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes. Then came 2008, the big one. And this is where the gold narrative really falls apart. So gold went from $800 to $1,900. Sounds great. But it took 3 years to peak. And if you needed liquidity during the actual crisis in 2008 to 2009, you were selling at $800 to $900. And just when you thought it couldn't get more absurd. Number 3, March 2020, when the entire fantasy collapsed in real time. COVID-19 didn't just crash markets, it broke the physical world. March 16th, 2020, the day everything changed. The Dow dropped 2,997 points. Panic selling hit every asset class. And for the first time in modern history, Americans experienced something the Amish always knew was possible: supply chain collapse. Grocery stores emptied in 48 hours, toilet paper gone, meat gone, flour, rice, canned goods vanished. Suddenly, your investment portfolio didn't matter. Your gold coins didn't matter. What mattered was whether you could eat next week. Here's your devastating comparison. In April 2020, gold was trading at $1,700 per ounce. An average family of 4 needed roughly 2,000 calories per day to survive. That's 60,000 calories per month. Better try going to your neighbor during a lockdown and trading gold for food. See how that goes. Gold became worthless the moment you couldn't easily convert it to the things you actually needed. But wait, here's the most shocking statistic in this entire story. During 2020, while 22 million Americans filed for unemployment and food bank lines stretched for miles, Amish communities reported increased food security. They weren't dependent on trucks, distribution centers, or just-in-time delivery. They had grain stores, they had livestock, they had gardens, they had preserved foods from previous harvests. Let that sink in. The wealthiest nation in human history couldn't feed itself for 3 days without trucks running. But a group of people who reject modern technology had 6 months of food security sitting in their basements. Tell one family I read about in Ohio, they tried to buy eggs from their Amish neighbor for $100. The Amish farmer wouldn't take cash. He wanted labor, help with harvest, real value exchange. Your paper and metal meant nothing. The crisis exposed the ultimate truth. Resilience isn't about what you own, it's about what you can produce when everything breaks. The dark secret. Nobody talks about why the financial industry needs you to buy gold. Here's what I found, digging through industry reports and financial disclosures, and you cannot make this stuff up. Between 2008 and 2020, gold ETFs collected over $140 billion in assets. Firms like GLD, IAU, and countless others managing gold investments for everyday people. Annual expense ratios between 0.4% and 1%. Doesn't sound like much, right? Do the math. That's $560 million to $1.4 billion per year in fees, just for holding gold on your behalf. But here's the smoking gun. A 2019 report from the World Gold Council, the industry's own marketing organization, showed that investment demand, ETFs, coins, bars, accounted for 29% of total gold demand. The financial industry literally created artificial demand for gold by convincing you it's a crisis hedge. Then they charged you fees to hold it. Then they made money when you traded it. Then they made money when you sold it. Let me name names. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, HSBC. These institutions are authorized participants in gold ETFs while simultaneously trading gold futures and providing storage. They profit at every single layer. They're the house, and they always win. Here's what makes me angry. They pushed gold specifically because it keeps you dependent on their system. You need them to store it securely. You need them to verify it's real. You need them to provide liquidity when you want to sell. You need their markets to trade it. The gold doesn't liberate you from the financial system. It just gives you a different flavor of dependency. The Amish model? It eliminates the middleman entirely. No fees, no counterparty risk, no need for vault storage or authentication. A bushel of wheat is a bushel of wheat. A chicken is a chicken. Skills are skills. There's no Goldman Sachs taking a cut. But the consequences didn't stop there. Where we are now. The system is more fragile than ever, and the Amish model is looking prophetic. Let me connect the dots to today, because this isn't ancient history. This is your immediate future. As of 2025, the US national debt stands at $36 trillion. That's $106,000 per citizen. Global debt, $307 trillion. Central banks are trapped. They can't raise rates without crashing everything, and they can't lower rates without igniting inflation. We're in what economists politely call a debt spiral. I call it a ticking time bomb. Meanwhile, de-dollarization is accelerating. The BRICS nations just launched alternative payment systems. Saudi Arabia is accepting yuan for oil. The dollar's dominance, the foundation of American financial power since 1944, is crumbling in real time. Here's the three-layer breakdown. Surface level. Gold hit $2,650 per ounce in December 2024, and gold bugs are celebrating. Deeper mechanism. That price surge reflects currency debasement and geopolitical instability, not gold's inherent value. Expert-level insight. When the next crisis hits and you need actual resources, gold's paper price won't matter. What matters is whether you can convert it to food, energy, and security. A recent study from Michigan State University analyzed household resilience during the 2020 supply chain disruptions. Families with home gardens, food storage, and local community networks reported 340% better crisis outcomes than those dependent on conventional supply chains. The Amish weren't in the study. They didn't need to be. They've been the control group for a century. This is why your grocery bill has increased 25% since 2020, while your wages haven't kept pace. This is why you feel poorer despite the stock market hitting records. The system is extracting value while providing less security. The question isn't whether another crisis is coming, it's whether you'll have real resilience when it arrives. The verdict: true wealth isn't what you hold, it's what you can do when the system fails. Here's the revelation that changes everything. The Amish aren't wealthy because they reject modernity. They're wealthy because they've built a system that produces value independent of institutional stability. When banks fail, they have mutual aid. When supply chains break, they have food stores. When currency devalues, they have tangible assets. When social trust collapses, they have community bonds that have been tested for generations. Gold won't save you because gold doesn't do anything. It sits there, shiny and inert, waiting for someone else to agree it has value. The Amish hedge isn't about hoarding metal. It's about building productive capacity, developing real skills, creating genuine community interdependence, and owning assets that generate value, regardless of what markets do. So what's the actionable insight? You don't have to abandon your bank account and buy a farm in Pennsylvania, but you can adopt the principles, reduce debt, build tangible skills, develop local relationships, create multiple sources of security that don't depend on institutional stability, store what you actually use, produce something of real value. The next crisis, and there will be a next crisis, won't care about your portfolio allocation or your gold coins. It will care about whether you can feed yourself, help your neighbors, and maintain agency when systems break down. The Amish have been running this experiment for 300 years. The data is in. The verdict is clear. If you found this uncomfortable and eye-opening, smash that subscribe button because we're just getting started. Let me know in the comments. What's one skill you could develop that would have value in a crisis? And check out our next video on the dollar endgame, why central banks are quietly preparing for collapse. The system is more fragile than they're telling you, but you don't have to be.